From WPRI TV, this is the Dan Hurley Show, presented by Supercuts.
And welcome to another edition of the Dan Hurley Show. Eric Murphy standing alongside WPRI head basketball coach Dan Hurley. Coach, 4 games since we last spoke, not going the way that you want as far as the win column is concerned. When we start looking at your team, are you seeing some progress there? And what are some things that maybe you're trying to get across to your team to become winners? Is this putting more time in the gym? Is it more time in the weight room? More time looking at tape? And you as a coach, and you also played the game, are you leaning on some of those experiences?
Yeah, I think it's everything. And when it gets tough is when you correct things, whether it's rebounding or defensive mistakes. And when you're not a good team, and a great program, it seems like you're always putting out one fire and then another fire begins. And I think what we've talked about the last couple of days is doing the extra stuff. You want to be able to make critical shots at the end of a game. You want to be able to make critical free throws, then get 500 shots extra a day when we're not together on the practice court. You get rewarded in sports for the work that you put in.
And when you look at it as a team, do you look at, obviously the big picture is the big picture, but are you just focusing one practice, the old cliche, one day, one game at a time with this group as you go along? Yeah,
I think that's been our attitude from the start. I had a pretty good sense that this is where we would be at. We've been competitive. We've fought hard. We're just not good enough right now to win games at this level. Whether it's a breakdown at one end of the court, missing an open shot, having a defensive breakdown. When you have to be so close to perfect to win a game, when you have those types of breakdowns, a program in our position right now without the great talent, without the great depth, it's going to have a hard time overcoming those mistakes.
We're going to focus on a couple of the guys and development of a couple of guys here in a second, but for now, let's take a look back on the recap the last 2 weeks of Rhody basketball.
The Rams' midseason conference slate featured a double dip against both A-10 newcomers. First, a visit from the VCU Rams. WPRI ready to rock in this one. VCU leads the league in turnover margin, but issues holding on to the ball early. Andre Malone, the steal an easy 2. Later, they turn it over again. This time, the X-Man leading the charge. Xavier Munford ahead of the pack. 2 of his team high 17. This one tight throughout the first half. Tavion Graham led all scores with 19 points. VCU up 1 at the break. In the second, check out the effort by Al Wayne Bigby, the grad student, put back and 1. Coach Hurley is pumped WPRI within 3. Rhody would go down by 15, but respond with a 10-0 run. Malone, the 3-ball. Another solid effort from the Rams, but VCU able to weather the storm. Javante Reddick, 18 points, 12 boards. They escaped with the victory, 70-64, the final score. From there was a trip to Indianapolis, historic Hinkle Fieldhouse to take on 9th-ranked Butler. Again, the Rams looking good early. Andre Malone, the steal, then heads the other way for the fast break dunk. Then Xavier Munford, feed from Mike Powell, knocks down the 3-ball to cap a 13-8 Rams run. But the Bulldogs would respond with a run of their own. Rodney Clark, one of the best shooters in the game, knocks down the 3. Bulldogs would go into the break with a 2-point lead. They'd go up by as much as 13 in the second, but Rhody continues to fight. TJ Buchanan draws the contact, hits the shot, pulling them back within 4. But Butler able to hang on at home, 75-68. From the league newcomers to one of the Rams' oldest rivals, UMass. WPRI looking to snap that 4-game losing streak, down early but able to rally. Andre Malone tying things at 21. UMass would answer with an 11-0 run. Rhody grabbing momentum right before the half. Munford, the buzzer-beating 3. He had 22 in this one, but outdueled by UMass point guard Chaz Williams. 3 for 5 from downtown, 27 points. WPRI falls to 1-7 in the A-10. The Rams finish up the weekend by taking on St. Bonaventure at the Ryan Center. After holding a 6-point halftime lead, the Bonnies outscored WPRI 41-29 in the second half, including finishing the game on a 9-3 run. Munford again led the way for the Rams with 18 points.
And we don't have video of that St. Bonaventure game because a little bit different circumstances there with the blizzard, Storm Nemo coming in and switching things around. As a coach, how do you approach it to kind of keep focus with your players? Did you guys get together earlier in the day when you were supposed to play and do a shoot around? How did you guys approach it as a staff?
Yeah, we just went with the idea of trying to keep it as normal as possible. Obviously taking into account trying to keep everyone as safe as we could, and we were able to eventually put together a little bit of a shoot around. It wasn't the normal game day type of routine, but there were obviously a whole lot of other people in the state and in the area that were having a lot more difficult time than we were.
And when you look at the game, you guys were up at the halftime, and I'm sure the crowd maybe wasn't as big, and maybe, I don't know if they were into it or not, but it didn't seem like early on, at least, that your players lost any focus. They seemed focused coming into the game.
Yeah, we played pretty well, and I think that's the discouraging part. We go through some scoring droughts during the course of the game, but I thought our effort was much more, like it's been throughout the year. We played hard. We just didn't play well enough to win, and the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game, when you need to make critical shots and make critical free throws, and not commit silly fouls and put the opponent on the line for easy makes, we just failed.
Even when you're struggling to get into the win column, you have to look at some of the positives on the roster, at least from the outside looking in. I know you demand a lot of your guys, but just for instance, the development of Jordan Hare. He's 42 blocks now on the season. Getting him to use that size and length on defense, and he's turning into an okay offensive player as well, isn't he?
Yeah, the last 3 games that he's participated in, minus the UMass game where he couldn't play, we think he's been fairly productive, especially offensively. And as his understanding of the game increases, he's got a chance to be a really, really good player for us. He's being forced into a role that he's probably not ready for. As a freshman weighing 185 pounds, being asked to bang down low. But he's really, I think, a competitive kid that isn't handling losing well right now, and that's something that I like.
And when you look at Xavier Munford continues to really be a strong player. We're going to talk more about him and some of your other transfers, but obviously you're pleased with the play. He's been able to stay steady even through the losing streak. Yeah,
I think he's, the last 5, 6 games, I think second halves of games, he's kind of been worn down a little bit. He's getting so much attention. He's got so much of a scoring load that is thrown upon him, just based on not having the other great answers that you want to have. And, we've got to find a way to keep him fresh down the stretches of games, close games, where he could give us that critical make or two. But it's hard right now with the lack of depth because you need him to do everything.
Yeah, he has to play a ton, and we'll talk more about the players as we go on. But up next, we're going to talk to your boss, Thor Bjorn, the athletic director. We'll catch up with him. We'll be back with more on the Dan Hurley Show after this.
The Super.
Welcome back to the Dan Hurley Show. Sitting alongside URI head coach Dan Hurley. Time for our player profile. Now this week we went and actually talked to your boss. The relationship with Thor, quickly for you, just how have things gone here in the first, not even a year into the job?
Yeah, Thor is a major reason why I came to URI. Hit it off right away during the interview process, and he's a great guy to work with. He obviously has the same vision for the program that I have, and somebody that's easy to work with every day because he's a real supportive leader.
Yeah, he's a very positive guy, and he had a lot of good things to say about you as well. Let's now look. Sarah Hogan sat down with Thor Bjorn last week.
All right, thanks, Eric. I'm down at the Ryan Center on the URI campus with URI Athletic Director Thor Bjorn. Now, Thor, obviously, we're in the midst of the season right now, so part of the new regime. Just want to get your initial thoughts on the season so far and how everything's going with the new crew, so to speak.
I'll tell you, it's been amazing to watch Coach Hurley and his staff work. It's just a whole different ethic and accountability, and the way he's rebuilt this culture from the ground up, not only with his team, but with all the members of the athletic department in terms of really letting people know that he expects excellence from everybody, and people are really trying to elevate their game and give him the resources he needs in terms of support and energy and passion to help him build something very special.
Obviously, being in your 5th year, you've gone through the coach searches, you've had your, dealings with having to find new coaches in different departments and, different sports here at URI. But from early on, it seemed as though Dan was a perfect fit for here, and it seems as though now that we're in the midst of the season that it's, it's a growing family.
Oh, it really is. I mean, from day one, we targeted Dan as the person we thought could be the right guy to turn this program around, and he's proven that. I know from a wins and losses standpoint, we're not where he would like to be, but what I look at and what all of our fans are looking at is what he's building, and that's what's been really fun to watch.
And you talk about a rebuilding year. Does it surprise you at all that the fans have are still packing the stands here, and you have such an awareness, not only around the Kingston area, the URI area, but across the state that, hey, we've got something good going on here.
There's a lot of excitement about Dan and about what he's building, and our students have been really supportive, coming out in droves to watch these guys compete. Just prior to sitting down with you today, I was walking by some football players who said, hey, I'll be at the game on Saturday. I love what they're doing. I know they're not winning as much as they'd like, but wow, they're fun. That's the excitement. And so I think people are really thinking about next year and the year after and the year after. And that's not only with our students, who have been great coming out and supporting us, but it's also the general fan base, season ticket holders. And it is a statewide. That's one of the great things about being the University of Rhode Island, where we can, when we are going to be successful, the state feels really good about that. So there's a real bright future.
I think one of the games that really sticks out this season, a home game, would be the one against VCU. I mean, the crowd was, everywhere. And not only that, but, the players and the coaches can feel it here on the court, so quote-unquote the sixth man. What was it about that game, that really packed the house? What was
so great about that game was that it was a university initiative. It wasn't just athletics. Some of our athletic staff worked with Dr. Jeff Pluff in housing and residential life, and then he really activated all of the RAs in the various dorms to get a huge number of students. I think we had over 2,800 students here. It was our second largest student attendance ever. And that was awesome. It was so much fun. It was also really amazing to see how much the university continues to embrace this program. They want this university, or our basketball program, to be successful, and they want to help us get creative. Tom Dugan, our Vice President of Student Affairs, has done a great job of trying to provide us some avenues into various things, whether it be the dining hall, and Steve Mello, who runs our dining hall and operation, has been so great to allow us to get into that facility to promote our games. As I mentioned before, the housing and residential life people, all of student affairs have been incredible. But again, that's what makes URI unique, I think, compared to a lot of other schools. Our university, our professors, our deans, our president, they all want us to be successful because they know we're trying to build something the right way. So it's been really fun to see something like that, an initiative that big, be so successful. Everybody had a great time. And has Dan sort of, come to you and said the difference when you guys do have so many people rocking the house? Does he and the team feel it? They feel it as soon as they walk out of the tunnel. And if we ever have a day that's down in terms of attendance, the guys feel that because they really can build upon excitement and emotion. And so, at that VCU game, for example, that was an amazing basketball game. And when we went on our runs and they got the crowd got them going, you could also see the VCU team starting to, take a step back a little bit. That's what a home court's all about. And we've gone out and played in some very difficult places, and the same thing happens. I saw what our team was able to do and overcome that same sort of crowd at St. Louis and win that game. We need that crowd. We need every one of these stands packed for every game. And again, we know that winning's going to drive a lot of that, and we know that we have the right guy that's going to get us in position to do that down the road. But again, if people just come out and watch us play and watch these guys compete so hard, they will keep wanting to come back. And I think it's proven now that our students have continue to come after coming out for a couple special, unique times. You mentioned Pink Out, too. We have Pink Out coming up in the near future. That's always a great student initiative for us, too. So we want the students here because they create the environment. And when they're having fun, the general public and the ticket buyers are having a great time as well. When you talk about down the road, how important is it for fans not to necessarily look at, the wins and the losses, but how this team is growing and to really, stay with their team in the future and really help out this program? Because they are, the other part of the program. That is so important. And again, we know, I hear it all the time whether I'm out in the community or getting emails from people. People don't have any concern about the wins and losses this year. They don't. They're so excited about what they're seeing being built and the accountability and the hard work and the effort. So that's the piece that we're really going to go forward and sell going into next year, where we say, look, and we're certainly not writing off this year. I don't mean to say that at all, because we still have a number of games left, and we have so many young guys that are going to continue to compete and get great opportunities to play in a very difficult conference, which is only going to make them better in year 2 and 3 and 4. But again, as we think towards our future and putting together some new initiatives and marketing plans and so forth, we have a lot of footage and a lot of stories to be able to tell about Dan Hurley and what he's building and the quality of student he's bringing in, and the quality of kid from an academic standpoint he's bringing in. So there's a lot of great stories to tell. And we're looking for many great things to come, of course, in the future. Thor, thanks as always. Sarah, thanks so much for having me. Oh, no worries. And Eric will send it back to you in studio.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Thor. And, Coach, they hit a lot on the VCU game, and I know after that game you went over to the student section and you thanked them. And you mentioned obviously VCU coming to town is attractive, but still, just getting guys in there, and it's important, I'm sure you thought it was obviously, to walk over there and thank those fans for coming out. Yeah,
that support, you need it. We're both kind of, the fans and the program are, we're going to build this thing together here. We're not where we want to be in terms of our results, but we're doing the things in terms of laying our foundation. And the crowd and the fans that I interact with and the students on campus, they could see what's coming for us in the future. It's just at times, it's great to get that support when you're fighting so hard and coming up short.
I think it's we've talked enough about the last couple of weeks. I think it's time to go over to the board and maybe draw up some plays. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, coming up next, the Beltone Breakdown. We'll be back with more on the Dan Hurley Show after this.
The Alex and Ani Rodi Profile, brought to you by Alex.
Welcome back to the Dan Hurley Show. It is now time for our Beltone Breakdown on the dry erase board. And Coach, we've done a couple different things over the last couple weeks. We showed some game highlights. We talked about some philosophy. Now we're going to go inside the practice because, as you mentioned, this is where it all starts every day in the practice on the court. And we're going to start with a drill called Drop, Touch, Change. So I'll just let you kind of explain it and go to town on it.
Well, it's one of our core drills that we do, which, it encompasses a couple different ways that you have to defend. Transition defense, getting your rotations correct defensively in the half court, and then also working on your communication defensively. So we'll start, and the O's signify our offensive players. All right, we have 4 spaced out along the perimeter and 1 post player that's on the ball side box relative to where the basketball is. The X's are our defenders. All right, if you're at a game or you sit behind the bench, you'll often hear me or one of our coaches yelling no middle. So anytime that we guard the basketball, we always want to send the ball sideline or baseline. We never want to give up middle penetration because it leads to kick out threes and choices in the lane with the dribbler. 1 pass away, each guard in the corner, and the guy at the left elbow, we want to be what we call scraping the passing lane. We want to have our finger pads in the passing lane, but not our body, because you can't help on a dribble drive if your body's in the passing lane. Post defensively, we want to 3/4 the post, meaning on the top side of his shoulder with our hand in the passing lane. And then the player guarding the offense player in the opposite corner is a help defender. He's got to have 2 feet in the lane so that he can help in the post, help on dribble penetration, and then also still be able to close out to his man. So I'll be the coach here, standing at the top of the key here without a whistle, and they'll be passing the ball around. As the ball's moving around the perimeter into the post, our defenders have to be in the correct positions defensively. On the command change, which I will yell at the top of my lungs, the defenders now have to change who they're guarding, all right? They must guard somebody different, and the first 2 things that must be guarded are the ball and the guy in the post, because those are the 2 things that can hurt you the most immediately. So it's really important on that change piece that guys are communicating and moving around with great urgency and energy. Okay?
Yeah, I know. I was going to ask you, obviously communication is very important in this drill, and is that kind of the main thing, is to communicate defensively for these guys?
Yeah, that's what mature teams do and winning teams do. They talk about things that matter. Calling out screens, calling out help position, calling out ball in transition. The winning teams communicate at the highest level.
And if you can, is there more to this drill?
Yeah, so
okay.
On your change, it's not live. So you're still almost in a shell defensive drill, working on the communication and what we prioritize. And now we have 2 other commands. If we yell touch, okay, the drill now becomes a live competitive situation. If we yell touch while the ball's here, the defender guarding the basketball has to sprint to the nearest sideline or half-court line and touch it before he can return into play. Once I yell touch, it's now live. So the guy with the basketball now drives it. We're forced to now rotate and communicate, stop ball. Ball gets kicked out corner, the next player's got to rotate, and it becomes a team defensive drill. The player that went and touched the sideline has got to run in opposite and pick up the man on the weak side. And it's a good communication, good on working on closeout technique and rotations. And during the course of the drill, if we yell drop, Whoever has the ball offensively simply drops the ball to the floor. Defense picks up the ball and pushes it at the offense in transition. So you're working on your communication, you're working on your rotations, and you're working on your transition defense, all in about a 20-minute drill segment, which we keep score of, and the losing team runs.
And is this something that you run every day in practice?
You know, it's something that you could maybe do leading up to your first game. You might do it 4 or 5 times a week. Once you get in season, you really only bring it out when guys are struggling and when you really feel like you got to get back to the basics.
Very good, and thank you once again for schooling us all in the game of basketball.
Yeah.
All right, that's the Bell Tone Breakdown. We're back to wrap things up with a look ahead to Rhody basketball. More on the Dan Hurley Show coming up after this. It's time now for our final segment of the Dan Hurley Show, and it's time to look ahead to the next 2 games on the slate. And first up is a home game on Wednesday against Dayton, and I think on paper a lot of people going in thought maybe Dayton would be a little bit better than 13-10 on the season. They have lost 3 out of 4. They have a pretty good player in Kevin Dillard, a transfer from Southern Illinois, and they're 5th in the A10 in scoring on offense, so they can still score the basketball. But what are you seeing that this team presents a challenge other than that, being able to put the ball in the bucket?
Yeah, you know, athletically talented, you know, some real skilled guys. You know, they had a pretty strong out-of-conference performance. You know, they've been a little bit snake bit, you know, end of games, you know, watching the game versus Temple, they were the better team throughout and just kind of found a way to give it away late. You know, Dillard's one of the better players in the conference. He's going to be a bundle for us to handle in our ball screen coverage. And
on Saturday, you guys take a road trip. You head out to Pittsburgh, the A.J. Palumbo Center, to take on Duquesne. Now, here's a team with 11 straight losses. They're 0-9 in the Atlantic 10. Are you sniffing an opportunity here? You're not even thinking about that looking at the records?
We can't even think about them right now. You know, obviously it's a matchup of the teams that were picked to finish in the last 2 spots in the conference by the coaches. I'd imagine that the level of desperation in that game on Saturday for a win between the 2 programs is going to be at a very, very high level.
And you know a little bit about maybe how Duquesne's going to play. You've coached against their head coach, correct?
Yeah, Jim, you know, good friend, and did a great job, you know, at LIU, building a strong program. And you know, we're both in a very similar situation here, being at the bottom of the conference, coming from 2 programs that were at the top of ours.
Well, best of luck to you, and we'll catch up with you in a couple weeks, and maybe have a W to talk about.
I needed to breathe.
All right, once again, Dan Hurley here on the Dan Hurley Show. Coach, we appreciate it, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you for joining us here on MyR TV. We'll see you in 2 weeks with more with Coach Hurley. Have a good night, everybody.